More than 3,000 bus drivers from throughout the state met at Sydney's Wentworth Park to protest about the proposed changes. The state government wants to reduce the number of students eligible for free bus travel by restricting it to those students who live more than 1.6 kilometres, as the crow flies, from their school. This does not take into consideration natural barriers. Last night there was some compromise. The state government agreed to include those students who have to walk more than 2.3 kilometres to school. However, the Transport Workers Union is still upset, claiming up to 1,000 jobs will be lost. The union today set a deadline for the government to back down on the issue. Unless there's been more compromise by December the 13th, all school bus services will be stopped next year, and the union has threatened more widespread industrial action. Meanwhile, as a result of today's strike, 400,000 students throughout New South Wales were left without private bus transport. Alternative arrangements were made, though in some cases absenteeism resulted. In the Hunter, 250 buses were off the roads as a result of the strike. Regional Chairman of the Bus and Coach Association, Robert Hertogs, says the government has badly miscalculated the effects of the proposed changes.
I think that the government have been very poorly advised on this. The government have had a report for 30 months now, compiled by a chap called Russell, and they've been working on some changes to the free school travel scheme. The fact that they've come up with this 1.6 as the crow flies, to us was a very irrational change to the scheme. There was no consultation with the bus and coach industry, and once the announcement was made, it was immediately obvious to us that it was more far-reaching than the government had first thought.
How much do private bus companies in the Hunter stand to lose?
Bus companies would lose over $1 million in the Hunter Valley. There are 6 or 7 bus companies who are going to lose between $100,000 and $350,000 in revenue per year, and that's a lot of jobs.
This impressive environmentally controlled $200,000 pig palace is home to the Boar Performance Testing Station, the first of its type in the state and run by the Department of Agriculture with funding from the pig industry. Inside at present are 103 young boars, ranging in age and weight from 12 to 22 weeks and 25 to 90 kilograms. They represent about 4 levels or stages of the testing. They come into the station after a month-long quarantine period and begin munching their way through a specially designed high-protein diet. All the time their performance is closely monitored by their keeper Anne Mabey, who checks for growth rate, feed conversion and carcass quality, which is measured by sonar back fat testing. The statistical information is then tabulated and analysed by the Department of Agriculture's local pig officer Kevin Hickey. The aim of it all is to identify individual animals and breeding strains which have an overall superior performance. The above average performers are returned to their owners or sold. The below average ones that either don't have a high growth rate, acceptable feed conversion ratio or a suitable back fat thickness are slaughtered. The final result being that only the best boars live to pass on their characteristics to the industry. Already Kevin Hickey is finding the test very useful, and he says it's shown up some startling differences in performance.
We're getting a great variety in performance. We've had pigs that have grown up to 1,200 grams a day, and on the other extreme we've had pigs that have grown at 500 grams a day. The average for our large whites that have gone through for the breeders, an average have been 828 grams a day, with a 15mm back fat. With the landrace, it has been slightly slower growth rate, but a leaner pig. The hybrids, on the other hand, have grown at an average of 1,009 grams a day. There's been about 14mm of back fat, and they've been slightly better in feed converting than the 2 purebred lines.
As well as helping the individual boar breeders who have been drawn from throughout the state, the testing station should have a major impact on commercial pig meat producers by enabling them to buy proven performance-rated breeding stock that will improve their own herds. In the final wash, the consumer should also reap the benefits by being supplied with a more efficiently produced and better class product. There's a great demand from the industry and from the consumer for a more cost-efficient and superior pig meat product. And that's basically the aim of this boar performance test station, to enable producers to produce what the consumer wants better and quicker and more efficiently. And such is the importance of this test that while the failures themselves are only worth slaughter value, the top performing boars can be worth anything up to $1,500 or $2,000.
peace formula proposed by the Minister yesterday was that the body of the report be set aside and its resolutions acted upon for a time while a working party is established to look into the recommendations. Mr Mulock also said that the recommendations relating to the intensive care unit should be examined as a first priority. The report's comments on the unit have been a main source of objection.
Were the nurses happy with the peace formula proposed by the Minister?
Yes, after a lot of questioning and clearing up a lot of points, they were very pleased and they weren't suspicious of the Minister's proposals.
In a surprise move today, the nurses expressed their support of the hospital's nursing administration but condemned the board of directors for not publicly supporting the actions of the nursing staff. They also proposed that the board be made aware that the branch interpreted their lack of support as cowardice.
Till the 14th
Board
of June.
Chairman Graham Mullane says he's disappointed at the nurses' condemnation of the board. Mr Mullane says the board was in a difficult position, and while they appreciated the staff's concerns, they were also concerned with the effects of industrial action or the withdrawal of services on patients.
The bodies of the 59 people killed in the hijack drama a week ago were flown in from Malta to Cairo earlier today and handed over to relatives who arranged their hometown funerals. The plane carried the remains of an Australian woman and 7 Filipinos who were transferred to their own countries for burial. Another plane from Malta arrived carrying the 12 Egyptians who survived the ordeal. The only American killed during the hijack drama was also buried today. Scarlett Rogenkamp was on her way to Egypt for a holiday. She was shot by hijackers and her body then thrown from the plane. The US government presented her mother a Purple Heart Medal in recognition of Miss Rogenkamp's sacrifice.
If you haven't started your Christmas shopping yet, then you have just over 3 weeks to begin making some decisions. And there's a lot to choose from. Major department stores in Newcastle have decorated their showrooms in all the colour and spirit of Christmas. According to Santa, the most popular items on this year's list range from Cabbage Patch dolls to trampolines, bicycles and Transformers. General Manager of David Jones, Frank Baxter, says they're expecting a big month of record sales and have taken measures to cope with the demand.
This year we're going to trade on 3 additional nights, as well as the Thursday nights that we trade, and that'll be Friday the 13th, Friday the 20th, and also Monday the 23rd of December.
Are you expecting a big month?
Yes, I'd say that December's figures will be an all-time record again, and I would think should bring us in 8 or 9%. That should continue right through December, up over last year.
A huge Christmas display adorns the Charlestown Shopping Square Plaza. An 8-metre fir tree is the centre of attention. Surrounding it are animated scenes of the celebrated occasion. Retailers say this year shoppers started heavy buying of Christmas gifts in November, but for some, the pace has been all too much to handle.
Santa says he's already busy taking down all the orders from the boys and girls, but says he'll always have time to hear what big kids like me want under their Christmas trees.
Well, I originally come over for a 3-week holiday in 1982 and stayed a year. Went back to Canada and said, nah, it's too cold here. I'm going back to where the people live.
Well, how did you get started on your musical tour?
Well, one afternoon I was sitting in the Gold Coast playing guitar and people started throwing money at me, Stephen. And being a retired businessman, I decided to do something with that money. And I took it down to Foundation 41 and gave it to them to help with the research into the cause of birth defects.
I see. And how much money do you think you will have raised by now after a year on the road?
Somewhere around 35 grand, I guess, in the period of time I've been at it.
And while you're here in Newcastle, will you be performing at all?
Yeah, I'll be downtown in the mall and on the stage there for tomorrow and through till the weekend, and playing my guitar and continuing on with the busking project to help Foundation 41 with their research.
And what about the future? Do you plan to stay in Australia?
Oh, I think I'll be spending some time in Australia. I like the weather here. It sure beats shoveling snow 12 months a year.
If you can handle the noise of the cicadas, that is.
Well, I guess they're music to somebody's ears.
Great.
Police say the accident occurred at about 4:15 yesterday afternoon. Although no positive cause has been found, police believe that the flat-top semi-trailer heading south on the Pacific Highway lost control when turning the bend near the Catherine Hill Bay turnoff. It's thought that the load carrying 7 steel girders slipped, pulled the trail over, snapping off the turntable. Diesel spillage lined the highway where the road surface had been severely damaged by the heavy impact of the load. The driver was thrown from the cabin and taken to Belmont Hospital, where he remains in a serious condition, suffering head injuries, a broken arm and lacerations.
I'm Helen Hughes. In tonight's news, I'll bring you the story of a 15-year-old ballet dancer from Warners Bay who has been chosen to study at the Victorian College of the Arts. The college selected only 3 dancers from throughout the whole of Australia.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
Terrorism overseas these days is unfortunately a way of life. We've been relatively untouched here. But starting tomorrow for 3 days, police in our area here in the Hunter are going to undergo an exercise in anti-terrorism.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
Year-old Paul Verino will be at the Cronulla Leagues Club pitting himself against the very best in World Championship bodybuilding. For the first time, he'll be up against competitors from all over the world, in a sport that many overseas contestants are now virtually involved in on a full-time basis. So how does our local spray painter think he'll fare?
Well, there's going to be some very good competition there. To place in the top 10, the top 15 will make me very happy.
Well, for the first time, being in a world-class event, they have got the junior division broken down into weight categories, haven't they?
They have, yes. I think this will probably be to my advantage. I'll be competing against people my own age, as well, roughly around the same weight division, which could be a help.
Paul, this is your last competition as a junior. Are you getting sick of the discipline that's required to be a top-class bodybuilder?
Maybe not sick of it, but a little tired, yes.
What does this mean, that this perhaps will be your last competition?
Hopefully not. Hopefully a good break will do me good and I may compete again, maybe in 2.5 years' time.
Miners gathered at yesterday's mass meetings to discuss and consider a coal industry tribunal ruling on Tuesday. The ruling awarded a flow-on of the 3.8% national wage rise for the coal miners, but only on the agreement that the union stop taking industrial action over the productivity claim. According to the miners, the coal industry has enjoyed a productivity rise of 30% for the past 3 years. It's a share in those profits that the union members believe they're entitled to.
We look on the output of the industry and the increased productivity across the board in New South Wales and Queensland, and we feel that the mine workers deserve a flow-on of those increases in production.
Rejecting the tribunal's recommendation, miners at both Curry and Singleton voted to demand the 3% wage rise and what they call freedom to negotiate their claim without restrictions. If these demands aren't met, industrial action was offered